Okay, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Sophia, so nice to have you here. How are you? Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. And it's so interesting to listen to the last few minutes of these conversations. It's so fascinating to be part of this whole thing. So thanks for having me.
You're welcome. It's been an awesome summit so far. And we want to thank everybody for being here. I'm so excited about Sophia closing out the summit from Live and Invest Overseas. If you guys don't know about Live and Invest Overseas, you probably should. They are like the number one anything overseas publication, living, investing, retiring. And Sophia is one of the authors. And I wanted to, please elaborate on exactly what you do with Live and Invest Overseas, and also, your relationship to living abroad and traveling and what your life has been. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks for that really, really nice intro, Shauna. So what I do at Live and Invest Overseas, I'm the editorial director. And it's a publishing house. And basically what we do is produce all types of content, everything from free e-letters, which are kind of like email dispatches, to subscription services, to information packages, to conferences, to podcasts, etc. All types of media, basically, and content surrounding the whole theme of, as the company name tells you, living and investing abroad in other countries. And as editorial director, I'm involved in producing that content. So I head up the editorial department that is responsible for churning out all this information and content about these subjects.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that intro. And I already know we have fans of Live and Invest Overseas in here. Pam Turner says, hi, Sophia. I've been following Live and Invest Overseas for a couple of years, and it was the first introduction that my dream could be a reality. So we know that you guys are really helping people and helping spark those dreams and to make those dreams become reality. So we want to say thank you. And so one of my first questions is, how do you guys help people to start living abroad? And, what does that look like in whatever you create and in your job?
I would say, to summarize it in kind of a nutshell, it's about opening people's eyes to the possibility that living in another country is a very realistic, tangible thing. It's not some pipe dream or some far off, aspiration. It's actually very achievable. I think for a lot of Americans and Canadians who are our main audience or demographic, especially retirement age folks, they are operating under the misconception that it's way too expensive to live in another country. And I would say nowadays, it's way too expensive not to live in another country. For any of us who are abroad, we know that the cost of living in other countries can be way lower than it is in the United States. And that is not lower cost of living for a lower standard of living. In many cases, it's a higher standard of living for a lower cost. And I'd say everything going on in the United States this year to do with, inflation and fears about recession and, all these horrible headlines that have been going around. Overseas, you can seek out a lower cost of living that would kind of mitigate those concerns. Again, especially for retirement age folks and people on a fixed income for the rest of their lives. Those types of things can be really scary, but you can alleviate some of those fears by moving to a nice country, a desirable place where the cost of living is lower, and some of those fears can be alleviated.
Amazing. Thank you for that explanation. And tell us more about your experience. How did you get on this living abroad journey? And now you're in charge of, you're the editorial manager. I think that's so cool. And I know that this was a big part of your life. So can you kind of walk us through what your journey has been? Where are you from? Oh, where you're at now? Because I think people don't know that you're in Bali and it's 4 a.m. She's on call, you guys, at 4 a.m. I just think it's so cool. And I want to thank you for that. But go ahead. Please tell me about your journey.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm one of those people actually started out abroad. I'm Canadian. That's my citizenship. Okay. But I was born in Singapore. And I lived in Indonesia and the Middle East throughout my childhood. I went back to Canada for high school and university. And then at that point, after graduating university, I made the decision to go abroad once again, as an adult, of my own choosing. And I moved to Colombia when I was, I think, 21 or 22 years old. And for me, it was kind of my normal was being immersed in different cultures and being in, different countries. So after, I don't know how many years it was, 7 or 8 years of living in Canada, I decided it was time to get back out there. I'd studied Spanish. I wanted to put that to the test and live in a Spanish speaking environment. And at that point, my whole family lived abroad. I think we're 5 people living at that point in 4 different continents. So again, it was just my normal to live in a different country. And I was ready for a challenge as well. And I thought moving to Colombia, kind of throwing myself into this new place, would be a great character building opportunity for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it really was. It was a great experience, and it was, one of those formative experiences for me. It was amazing, great time.
Yeah, like the
And
personal
then,
development piece is like huge. And I know a lot are very fearful of the unknown, but the things that will come from it are like so deep that it's really hard to explain like here on this conference. Like you just have to experience it, you know?
yes, definitely, for
Definitely.
sure.
So after Colombia and what were you doing for work this whole time?
So Colombia was kind of my first job out of university, and I was working in a bilingual school as a teacher. So not necessarily teaching English, but teaching elementary school in English. And I did that for about 2 years. And then I decided to move on to Panama because it was kind of, it's the next country over, but Panama City just has a reputation in Latin America, at least, as being kind of the economic goal, or the biggest city, I guess, in the region, where I could maybe just seek out more opportunity. So I moved on to Panama City, and that's when I found Live and Invest Overseas. So that's where our headquarters are. And I stumbled upon the job starting as an editorial assistant back in 2017. And then in beginning of 2019, I became a remote worker for the company, and I moved to the UK. So that has been my journey, just kind of
Wow. It's
zigzagging.
yeah, it's interesting to kind of like see what everybody's journey is and like how you got there. And it's so interesting because there's misconceptions. We haven't really been chatting too much about Latin America here, so I'd like to like maybe jump into that. But how easy is it? And what was your like experience of like the Latin American countries in that region, Panama, maybe like upper part of South America, Colombia? Was it easy to find that job in Panama? Did you have a problem being Canadian, getting a work contract and all that? How did that play out? And did you feel safe too? I'm curious about that too.
Okay, well, on the safety note, in Colombia, where I was living, I was not living in a very tourist destination. It's a real Colombian city that doesn't see a lot of tourists. It's not set up for that sort of thing. So I kind of stood out there just from my appearance. And people were really curious about me. They're like, what are you doing here? Like, I think I was causing a scene in some cases. And people were really genuinely curious. So in Colombia, I did have to just, be more cautious. And the people there actually, I didn't feel any fear when I moved there, but the people there were like, oh, you have to be careful. Oh, you can't walk there by yourself. Oh, you need to really watch out for yourself. I didn't experience any problems, but I did just feel, I had to just be more cautious than I would be, for instance, in Canada, like walking down the street with your cell phone in your hand. I might not think twice about that in Vancouver, but I wouldn't do that in Colombia.
Right.
And luckily, I had no problems there at all. In terms of, you asked me about like residency and getting work permit and those sorts of things.
Yeah, like specifically like this Panama example, you found work. Like how did they hire you? Is Panama open to taking workers from other countries? How did that work?
Yes, so Panama is actually a huge expat destination, especially for retirement age people. It has one of the best retirement visas in the world. You know, you don't even have to be over age 55 to qualify. You have to be over 18 to qualify. But I wasn't there on a retirement visa. I just wanted to point that out. It used to have a really turnkey, easy residency program called the Friendly Nations Visa, where if you're from one of 50 odd friendly nations, you can kind of just show up and ask for a residency and work permit. And it came as a 2-for-1 sort of thing. It was very easy. You just had to pay for a lawyer to file the paperwork for you. They've since changed the program to be slightly less easy to access. Now you have to make, you know, some sort of, you need to have the work permit in hand before you can apply for the visa, and you need to make some sort of investment. So it's less easy than it used to be, but countries are changing all the time with regards to their visa policies. And Panama just, I think in 2021, launched a digital nomad visa. So it's still an option. And I'd say if you want to do it, you'll find a way, you know, no matter the country. If you want to live there, there's always going to be a way to get that permanent status.
Yep. And I can attest, I had to figure out as an American, Spain wasn't as easy like 5 to 6 years ago. They just created a digital nomad visa like end of December. It just got passed. So I had the hard way. I needed to figure out, oh, like I need to get a master's. And then if I stayed as a master's student and I just kept renewing my visa, they would upgrade me from this student visa to a permanent residency. That's kind of the initial route I took. So that's a good point, is like, if you really want to be somewhere, you're going to figure it out. And
Exactly.
I'm sure you're an attest to that. I mean, you're in Bali right now, you're living in London, and you're Canadian. Like, it's harder for like North Americans, but there's always a way, right?
Definitely,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay,
And if I
awesome.
can do it, I think anyone can, because a lot of these moves, I was truly an idiot. I had no idea, you know, what I was doing or how to make it happen, and it worked out for me. So I think anyone with, you know, just a slight bit more organization could manage it as well.
Yeah, and like I wanted to touch on the Live and Invest Overseas platform. Do you guys have resources for all of these types of questions that we're having, like visa? I think this is one of the main like issues people, like it's really hard to get past. But you guys have all that on the Live and Invest Overseas website. Is that a good resource for them?
Yes, definitely. And once you get into the website and you kind of like filter through to your interest, often we have, you know, free reports and things like that to answer those types of questions.
Nice.
And we also have, for instance, e-letters that cover all types of subjects, but definitely residency, visas, that sort of stuff is so important, and we cover that often.
Amazing. And just for everybody that's here, we have a free, thank you for giving them access to a free conference, which is amazing. Is it a virtual conference, Sophia, or is it face to face?
It's a virtual conference.
Okay, so I'm gonna drop the link here. I noticed, Sophia, that you didn't have like a link. So I created a Google form, and everybody that fills out this Google form will get access to the free conference, and I'll send you everybody's info so that they can get access to the free conference. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Thank you. That's great.
So yeah, you guys are going to want to jump in on it. It's going to be in 2023. What is the title of it? Do you guys know yet?
Well, we have a conference about once a month covering different topics and different destinations. So for instance, the first one coming up is the Panama conference, actually the Belize conference, the Panama conference, there's the Portugal conference that I think Pam mentioned earlier, and they are still being lined up for the rest of the year.
Okay, got it. So this will give them access to one of those.
Yes, that's right.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So you guys are going to definitely want to do that. And then I have some more questions. So what are the biggest misconceptions about, you know, investing overseas, or, you know, going and buying property, or and what could those investments look like? Is it just property, or is there something else they could do too?
Well, the main things that we talk about are real estate investment and also agricultural. So for instance, investment in, you know, a farm, a hydroponics farm that's producing vegetables and selling them into the market in Thailand, for instance. But for biggest misconceptions, with regards to real estate, I think people often come to a place, they see it as a tourist, and they come with the tourist goggles on. You know, they're seeing everything with rose tinted glasses. Maybe they're spending a month at that in a place, and they're really seeing it from that point of view of tourist eyes, I guess. And they might buy property too hastily and not really think it all through, do the proper due diligence on who they're buying from and what the market's like. So I would say one thing that we always recommend if you're going to invest in real estate is to spend as much time in the place as you can before committing to a purchase. See the place at various times of year. You know, you want to see it in the peak of summer, but you also want to see it in the depths of winter to make sure that you still like it. And, you know, don't do the margarita madness thing where you get too hyped up and too excited on vacation and decide, oh my God, I want to live here, and go buy a place from some random person. You want to do more due diligence when you invest overseas, not less. So it's not really a misconception. It's kind of just, I guess, a mistake that can sometimes happen.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. And then what are like your main, like the struggles that you've encountered as clearly a global citizen, and like what can you share so that others don't really make the same mistakes? You know, I think that's why we're all together here, is to make sure we can share our secrets so like other people don't have to go through the same things that maybe didn't work out for us. What do you think you could share about that?
Well, in my earlier years of traveling and living abroad, I sought out places, as Dina was talking about it earlier, of living on tourist visas, doing the digital nomad thing. I reached a point where, for me personally, I wanted a more permanent status in a place. I wanted residency. So that was something that that's actually why I came to the UK, because I could get that very easily through Ancestry. So I would say it depends on what you want. But for me personally, at that time, like, I wanted to have a base. I wanted to have, you know, healthcare from somewhere, and solid bank accounts. I reached a point where I was I didn't have any roots anywhere, and it was complicated. Things like applying for a credit card or your driver's license. You know, if you don't live anywhere, how do you get those things sorted out? So that was something that I reached a point where I really needed that all to be kind of firmed up and to have a base somewhere. I think I was an extreme case, though. I had no base anywhere. And then other struggles and challenges for me on a personal level, I would say having to say goodbye to people all the time was really tough. It's still really tough. I'm leaving Bali in 2 days, and I'm already dreading, you know, saying goodbye to my family here. It's not easy. And then, you know, the thing of, you meet all these amazing people when you travel, a lot of like-minded people who are doing the same sort of stuff. And because of that, you have this natural instant bond and friendship. But the sad thing is then you go to the next place and you have to say goodbye to those people and start over again. And for some people that's invigorating. For some people that is a bit draining, or it can be difficult to start over every couple of months or years. For me personally, that has been the case. And it's so hard to say goodbye to people. That's the main thing that I'm thinking about at the moment.
Experiences. And I love that you're from Canada, because it reminds me of my really close friend that I made in Barcelona, and she was from Canada too, and she was on this certain visa, but she was only allowed to be there for a couple years, because you guys have some really cool visas that let you guys work and travel, the work and travel visa when you're under
in Canada.
30. Yeah,
right.
So she was on that, and I just remember I was so sad when she was leaving. She met her husband, in Barcelona. She got married. He was Argentinian, and they went back to Canada. And I haven't seen her since, but we're like we still talk and stuff. But it is bittersweet. Like that is very hard. But you know, you get it's the connection that you're gonna see, like hold in your heart. It's not, you know, it's tough, but it's part of life. We have to do what we want to do. So, okay, very cool. Well, I wanted to say thank you so much. And do you have any other secrets? And I just wanted to say thank you guys so much. And thank you so much for your time, Sophia. I don't want to keep you too long because we're a little bit past our slot. But do you have any last words for everybody as they're like embarking on their journey?
I would just say, it sounds almost like a cliche, but just to go for it, you know, as we were saying earlier, if you want to do it, you'll find a way to make it happen. And again, if I was able to do it at various times in my earlier years, and I was, you know, not really sure what was going on, I think anyone can do it. It's just a matter of wanting it and then figuring out the steps, you know, breaking it down piece by piece. The most important one is going to be residency. And I think after you have that, everything else will fall into place. Everything else can be managed from on the ground. Residency is really the big one you need to sort out before you leave. And just thank you for having me, and good luck to everyone here. I hope that you all are able to do whatever your aspiration is overseas.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate it. So let's give a silent applause for Sophia. I hope you're able to go back to sleep for a little bit because it's like now 4:30 or 5 for you. But we're looking forward to joining your conference. I'll definitely be there. And thanks so much.